بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذا الموءودة سئلت بأي ذنب قتلت. The first of our loud salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third with your loudest voices in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wa al-Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The verses in question, verses 8 and 9 of chapter 81 of the Holy Quran, discuss the status of the daughter in Islamic thought. One of the most profound discussions within the religion of Islam, and a discussion which requires a thorough analysis, for it is a discussion which affects each and every one of our lives. A discussion from which many a lesson may be learnt and many an example may be derived. And a discussion with a historical basis and a contemporary significance. Contemporary on the first level because the discussion allows us to answer the barrage of attacks and critics that constantly come forward and state that the religion of Islam is a religion which holds no respect for the female whatsoever. As in, if you were to go towards the media today, be it in the cyber world or indeed be it in the world of the press agencies, you'll find constantly there is a barrage of attack on the idea that the religion of Islam is a religion which oppresses the female, a religion which shows no respect for the female whatsoever, a religion which shows no reverence for the position of the daughter or the position of the mother or indeed the position of the wife. As in, constantly every day within the media you hear that the religion of Islam is a religion which has no reverence for the position of the female within its laws or within its ethical precepts. A discussion concerning such a verse allows us to understand the status of the daughter within the religion of Islam, and in turn allows us therefore to be able to answer those critics who come forward and state that the religion shows no respect whatsoever for the female. That's on the first level. On the second level, the rise of female infanticide in the world today has reached a level like it's never reached before. As in, with the ability to have sex-selective abortion, you find that in the world today we've reached a level where female fetuses are killed on a daily basis. As in, if you were to go towards India or to go towards a land like China, you'll find it normal for a gender selection, a selection where a female fetus is taken and is aborted. As in, when you find that in the last 10 years or so, over 8 million female fetuses have been aborted. Why? Because you find, for example, in India, there are certain villages where it's not revered to have a female within the family. Or in China, Beijing's policy of single families will mean what? Will mean a single child policy dictating that there will not be females who will be allowed to live. On the second level, the discussion of the status of the daughter is therefore vital Because when you look in a world today of the amount of fetuses, of females that are aborted, you realize that there is a need for us to understand the reverence that Islam gave towards this daughter. As in, when you go to Korea or to Pakistan, you go to India or to China, and you find that it's normal for a person as soon as his daughter is born, because culturally the daughter is not as highly revered as the son, that daughter is killed. Infanticide may take place after birth, but there is the same deaths which take place in abortion, that you look in the number of abortions that occur in the world today, highlighting a lack of reverence. The fact that we now can selectively choose the gender which we want to live and which we don't, means that 180 states got together in 1994 and decided that there was a need for us to come and understand the position of the female, the position of the daughter, that a daughter is not to be killed simply because the culture does not allow, or the culture does not revere her position. That's on the second level. On the third level, the discussion concerning the status of the daughter is a contemporary discussion, because of the fact that many of us here may have daughters. Many of us may have brothers who have daughters. Many of us may know of families who have daughters. And you find that even within Muslim communities today, there is a sort of grimace upon the news of a daughter in the family. As in, you look in certain Muslim families, when he's had one daughter, they tell him, inshallah, next time you'll have a son. When he has a second daughter, inshallah, next time you have a son. Even the person psychologically falls into this, that when he receives the news of a daughter, there's a sense of sadness within them. Therefore, on the third level, this discussion is contemporary because it affects us. As in, those of us with daughters need to understand the position of the daughter according to the religion of Islam. Therefore, let's examine these verses, verses 8 and 9 of chapter 81, and ask the following questions. Number one, what does God mean when he says, on the day of judgment, the female baby will ask, why was I buried alive? Number two, why did the Arabs bury their daughters alive? And what were the four main reasons that they gave? Number three, which famous companions of the Holy Prophet were affected because of daughters who were buried alive? Number four, how did the Prophet reform this concept in both his actions and his words? Number five, how important is the relationship between a father and his daughter in both nurture and growth? And number six, what was the relationship like between Imam al-Hussein and the four daughters in his life? Let's examine this and dissect this topic in complete depth. The verse in question, what does it say? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. The maw'uda, the idea that's given here is what? The wa'id refers to a heavy load placed on something. So if you have a particular object and there's a heavy load placed on it, that is known as the wa'id. The reason the female baby was known as the maw'uda was because of the placement of a heavy load of sand on top of that female when burying her alive. As in, you find these Arabs, in some cases, their ignorance had reached the highest of levels. As in, me and you, when we see a baby, you'll find us using terms of endearment. When I see a baby in front of me, irrespective of whether the baby is a daughter, is a female or a male, you'll find some of us will say she's beautiful. Some of us will say she looks so cute. You'll find some of us say she looks wonderful. Normally these are terms of endearment, as in the heart of the human being softens upon the sight of a daughter. These Arabs, on the other hand, what would happen to them? You'd find that these Arabs reached a level where they were willing to bury their daughter alive. The Quran, what does it do? The Quran fast forwards you to the day of judgment. In which way? The Quran wants you to see that on the day of judgment, there are certain of our creation, their haqq may have been taken in this world, but it will not be forgotten on the day of judgment. As in, there are certain creations in this world, they don't receive the justice that they deserve. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, if you think that they haven't been treated justly in this world, I'll allow them to speak up on the day of judgment. And that's why what you find the Quran here in Surah At-Takwir, the whole of Surah 81, what does it introduce you? It introduces the day of judgment to you. In Surah 81, the verses state what? The verses state, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنبٍ قُتِلَتْ. The Maw'uda will ask, for what reason was I buried alive? As in, would you believe there's a tradition of our Holy Prophet where he says that this Maw'uda will come blood-stained on the day of judgment and will hold the hands of its killer and will say, for what reason was I buried alive? The question arises, why did the Arabs bury their daughters alive? As in, why did they reach a stage and how where they were willing to bury that daughter alive? Because we know very well in our own lives, we see around us many human beings who have no children whatsoever. These people would be the complete opposite. They'd have children and want to perform infanticide of those children. Why? There were four main reasons that came forward. The first and the main reason why these Arabs would bury their daughters alive was a very interesting reason, and it may affect some of us in the 21st century. The first reason was that the Arab man would say that this daughter of mine, eventually someone's going to want to love her. Someone's going to want to have a relationship with her. I fear that that someone may be from a tribe whose leader I do not like. As in, each of us, if we're a father and we have a daughter, we know that one day our daughter's going to get married. Some of us know that our daughter, when she's going to get married, is going to get married in a way where we help her in her decision as her guardians. But others of us, always at the back of our head, there's a fear. What if she ends up having a relationship without my knowledge with the son of a family who I despise? What's going to happen? These Arabs, what would they say? They say that we fear this. There was an Arab man by the name of Qais al-Tamimi. Qais al-Tamimi, what happened with him? Qais had a daughter who was one of the most beautiful daughters in Arabia. Qais's daughter, one day what happened? She was infatuated with a member of another tribe. The problem was, that tribe was a tribe he hated, as in he had no respect for that tribe whatsoever. She ended up going towards that tribe. These people had irreconcilable differences with each other. She remained with them until the two tribes became friends again. When the tribes became friends again, now she had a choice. She could either return back to her father's home, or she stays with whom? Or she stays with the tribe she's married into. She said, I prefer to stay with my husband now. My husband treats me with the best of respect. I prefer to stay with him. The narrations mention when Qais heard this, he came forward and said, I swear, if I have another daughter, I'm going to bury her alive. They said to him, Qais, why? He said, I saved myself the distress and the anguish. All these years I've been in distress. How could my daughter get married to a member of a tribe whose leader I detest? Instead of going through this, the best thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bury all these daughters alive. And subhanallah, every daughter that came to him, what would he do? These Arabs would have two ways of burying their daughters alive. The first way would be what? The first way would be that he'd tell his wife, when you're about to give birth, I will dig a hole next to you. You sit on the ground and the hole will be next to you. If the doctor tells us that it's a boy, then return back to your tent safely and happily. If the doctor tells us it's a girl, then the hole is for the girl to be buried in straight away. And that's exactly what they would do. They would come, they'd take this girl, and the narrations would mention, they'd bury her in the sand there and then. Hence the word maw'uda in the Quran, what is it? The heavy burden placed on an object was what? Was that these people would come, they'd take the baby, they'd take this female, and they'd bury her straight into the ground. Then on top of her, put all the sand, with a spade hit the sand, the baby is crushed to death under the ground. Therefore the first reason was what? The first reason was fear, that my daughter is going to run away with someone from a family I don't like. Forget that, I'd rather kill her as soon as she's born. That was reason number one. Reason number two, what was it? Economic burden on the family. What do we mean? Reason number two was interesting. They said that this girl is going to be a burden for me, as in I'm going to have to maintain her for 15 years of her life, for 18 years of her life. And what happens if no one proposes to her and she doesn't get married? As in, okay, if she gets married, she's not a burden on my shoulders anymore. But what happens if someone proposes to her and at the end she doesn't get married at all to anyone? That means I have to maintain her forever. The narrations mention that, what would they say? Say that this girl becomes an economic burden on us in our life. This girl, when she becomes an economic burden, it's better that instead of me having to pay for her bills as she grows up, it's better that as soon as she's born, I get the spade and bury her alive. That was reason number two. Reason number three was an interesting one. Reason number three, what would they say? Say that this girl is not going to help me on the battlefield. As in, you know, these Arabs in those days, one's living in a tent, the other's in the tent across the desert. Every day there'd be a fight. Why is your sheep staring at my camel? Why is your camel staring at my wife? You know, they'd have fights over these really important issues in life. And so what would happen is that these petty fights would occur. When these fights would occur, you would find that these Arab men would say, our sons are our joy and pride in our life. Our sons are what? Our sons are our honor on the battlefield. They'll hold the sword and they'll defeat anyone who comes in their way. But our daughters, what will they do? Our daughters will just sit there in the house, produce children. Other than that, there will be nothing for us at all. In other words, our daughter on the battlefield will be of no use to us whatsoever. It's better that we get this girl and we bury her alive. That was reason number three. Reason number four, you see, these had each of their reasons. Reason number four said that this girl will not be able to economically stand for us in our businesses. What do we mean? Said that the markets of Arabia were markets for men. Women would not stand in the markets, as in today, if you go to certain Arab countries, even in a female store, there'll be men working, isn't it? Or even if you go to certain Asian countries, even in a woman's store, there'll be a man working. Their mentality was always a woman's place is at the home and a man's place is to go out and earn. Because of this, when a female would be born, they'd ask themselves, we have two journeys. We have a journey in the summer to Syria and a journey in the winter to Yemen. We need our sons for these journeys. Our daughters are not going to be of any use to us. So what would they say? They'd come forward and they'd say that instead of our daughter being born, it's better that we bury her alive. What's the need for this girl? Is she going to help me in the market of Uqab? Is she going to help my caravan to Syria? Is she going to help my caravan to Yemen? No, she's not. Instead, let me get this girl and bury her alive. In other words, these Arabs had their reasons, be it an issue of economics, be it an issue of war, be it an issue related to their household. They would come and they'd bury their daughters alive. And you found that certain companions of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you'd find that certain companions of the Holy Prophet themselves would state that even we were affected by this, as in even those companions of famous repute, of famous names, would say that we were affected by this concept of burying our daughters alive. For example, Umar ibn al-Khattab. Umar ibn al-Khattab, as we know, occupies a prominent position in Islamic history as being the second caliph. Yet Umar ibn al-Khattab himself would state that even in the days of ignorance, he says there are things which used to make me laugh and there are things which made me cry. And when I remember them, there are those things which always bring a smile, and those things which always bring a tear. So they said to him, O second Khalifa, which thing used to bring a smile to you? He said, what used to bring a smile to me is the idol that I used to worship. Because you know, many of these were idol worshippers before they came towards the religion of Islam. Umar ibn al-Khattab says, there was something that used to make me smile. What is it? The idol we used to worship was an idol we made out of dates. See, in the dates you break your fast with in the holy month of Ramadan. Imagine someone has the ingenious idea of making a god out of dates. And subhanallah, I don't think it's any different in 2012. I can show you parts of the world where a professor prays to things worse than dates. Anyway, so you find that what happened was, Umar ibn al-Khattab said, we used to have a god who was made out of dates. He said, when we all bow down to the god, when no one's looking, I take a date and I eat it. And then the person next to me takes a date and he eats it. He said, before you know it, within an hour, God was dead. As you know, if everybody is having a date from that tree, eventually that God will die. He says, when I used to remember that day, when I used to worship the idol, I smile at the fact that we used to worship an idol made out of something which we eat. Then he says, but there are certain things which make me cry. They said to him, what is it? He said, like when I buried my daughter alive. Said to him, oh second Khalifa, you buried your daughter alive? He said, yes. He said it was the normal practice in Arabia, that because of a number of reasons, either because of economic burden or because of other reasons, we would come and bury our daughters alive. And he said, it hurt me when I buried my daughter alive. They said to him, how? He said that when I came to hit my daughter, he said, naturally, a baby has involuntary movements, isn't it? As in, how many of you, when you've held the baby may touch your face, it may touch your hands. The baby has involuntary movements. He says, when I was holding my baby before I killed it, the baby touched my beard. And I noticed that feeling between a father and his daughter. He said, but anyway, I decided to place the baby on the ground, and with a spade I came and struck the baby. In other words, you found Umar ibn al-Khattab of the companions, yet still they were affected by this practice, where they would come and they'd bury their daughter alive. Not only Umar ibn al-Khattab, you found Ammar ibn Yasir, the great companion of the Prophet, was also affected by this verse in particular. And his parents, Yasir and Sumayya, came towards the religion of Islam when this verse of the Quran was revealed. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ was the reason Yasir and Sumayya came to the religion of Islam. How? Ammar, in those early days, you know, when a verse of the Quran came down, in those early days, you couldn't really come forward and propagate your Islam. As in those early days, you had to remain silent about your Islam. You couldn't come forward and state that you are a Muslim publicly. They would all go to the house of Al-Arqam. They'd sit down. They'd wait for the verses of the Quran. Rasulullah would come to them. He'd say, oh my companions, the following verses have been revealed. They'd listen to the verses. They'd memorize them. You know, their memory was outstanding. And then they'd go home to their families who didn't even know they had become Muslim. Ammar narrates, I went back home to my parents that night. He said, when I entered, upon coming home from my parents, he says, as soon as I entered, the narrations mention that his shoulder, what did his shoulder do? His shoulder struck the idol in the house. When his soldier struck the idol in the house, the idol fell on the ground and it broke. As soon as the idol fell on the ground and it broke, his mother looked towards him and she said, Ammar, do you see what you've just done? He said, what is it, mother? He said, you've just killed God. He looked at her and he said, mother, what did you say? He said, you've just killed God. He said, mother, how could you worship a God which dies? As in, if the God couldn't protect himself from my shoulder, how's he going to protect you and my father? When his father Yasir heard this, his father looked at him and said, how dare you speak like that to your mother? Who's taught you to talk in this way? The narrations mention that Ammar replied by saying, my holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, my holy Prophet is the one who taught me in talking about the idol and this understanding. At this moment his mother said to him, Ammar, what else has your Prophet taught you? He said, we have just received the verses of the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. The female baby will ask on the day of judgment, for what reason was I buried alive? At this moment, Sumayya, his mother, began to cry. As soon as Sumayya, his mother, began to cry, Ammar looked at his father Yasir. He said, Dad, what have I done to hurt my mother? Have I said something wrong? His father said, no, you haven't. He said, then why is my mother crying? What is the issue? The reply that came was, Ammar, your mother had two older sisters, your aunties. Your grandfather from your mother's side buried both of your aunties alive when they were born. But your grandfather, when he was burying the second of your aunties alive, as he was burying her, she touched his face in a way which hurt him. He swore that if he had a third daughter, he'd never bury her alive. Your mother Sumayya is the third daughter. Sumayya at this moment looked at Ammar and said, oh Ammar, if your Prophet has come to preach the rights of the daughter, then me and your father will come towards the religion of that Prophet. You see, the context is vital. Why? Because when someone comes and tells you, Muhammad oppressed the woman, tell them, do you know in which environment Rasulullah brought this religion? Rasulullah, it is vital we understand the context within which the religion was brought. The context was females being buried under the ground for no crime whatsoever. As in when the Quran said the female will cry on the day of judgment, for what reason was I as a daughter buried alive? It's a crime against humanity. And when you kill one human being, it's as if you've killed the whole of humanity. And don't think there weren't people who were speaking out against this. No. As in sometimes people ask the question that did the Arabs remain silent? As in surely as a human being, when I see another human being being killed, surely I speak out. Yes, there were people who spoke out. Amongst them, three famous figures. The first of them who spoke out was Sa'sa' al-Tamimi. Sa'sa' al-Tamimi, when he saw the Arabs burying their daughters alive, he would come towards them as they're about to hit the daughter and he'd say, oh man, wait. The man would say, what is it? He'd say, oh man, how much will it cost for me to ransom this girl's life? The man would say to him, what do you mean? This girl's a disgrace for me. She's not going to be of any use to me in my life. I wanted sons and all the idols gave me were daughters. He'd say, oh man, if there's a price, I'll pay the price. Some of these Arabs, as soon as they would hear the price, they would say, very well, if you give me X amount, I'll let the girl live. Imagine, the human can go that low. And that's why in the world today, in female infanticide, the industry of aborting fetuses, don't think it's a humanitarian industry. I tell you, it's a money-making industry, nothing more. It's a money-making industry. A doctor who's meant to be on a Hippocratic oath, on an oath of ethics, is willing to kill a fetus and show no remorse whatsoever. And that's the same in Arabia. And subhanallah, we used to say that's the days of Jahiliyyah. It looks like there's another Jahiliyyah today as well, isn't it? As in that's not the only days of ignorance. Today is a day of ignorance as well. You found Sa'sa' would come, that's number one. Number two, Waraqa ibn Nawfal, Khadija's cousin. Whenever he'd see anyone about to bury their daughter alive, he'd come up to them, he'd advise them, he'd say to them, oh people, this is a daughter of respect, of reverence. This is a blessing in your life. There are people without daughters and you have a daughter. Show respect towards this daughter in your life. Number three, the most outspoken proponent of rights for the daughter was Khadija, the wife of Rasulullah. You know, this Khadija had a house which was known for one thing. Do you know what it was? She would say, if any lady in Arabia fears for her daughter's life, knock at the door of my house at any time in the day or any time in the night. and my servant will come to me and inform me, and I'll look after you. And that's why herself, Khadija, she mentions that one night, in the middle of the night, my servant comes up to me, oh Lady Khadija, wake up. I said, what is it? My servant said to me that there is a female who is standing at the door. That woman has got a bag. She is coming to the house. She wants your help. Khadija says straight away, I came quickly to the door of the house. I saw this lady standing there. When I saw her, she had a bag. I thought in this bag there would be food. As in, if a human being is carrying a bag like this, she said, I thought there would be food. She said, eventually, lo and behold, I told her, what's in the bag? She took out a newborn baby from the bag. I said, so why have you placed the baby in the bag? She said, do you think if the father finds out, oh Lady Khadija, if the father finds out I've given birth, the father will take the baby and bury her alive. The Arabs used to have two habits. Either bury the daughter at the age of 1 day or at the age of 6 years of age. How old? 6. As in, there'd be a 6-year period where they'd be making up their mind. Should we kill her or live with her in disgrace? You find that even at the age of 6, you know what they would do to the daughter? They tell the mother, let her be in her finest dress, let her have the finest perfume. The father would take the daughter out, they'd walk towards a well. The father would tell the girl, look inside the well. She'd look inside, he'd say to her, do you see how deep the well is? She would say yes. From behind, he would throw her all the way to the bottom of the well. This lady came to Khadija, al-Mu'mineen. She said, oh Khadija, this is a baby, what do I do? Khadija said, do not worry. Let me meet the father, and if I have to pay from my own money to make sure that your baby survives, I will do that. And that's why Rasulullah would say, this religion would not have spread were it not for the sword of Ali and the wealth of Khadija. Because the principles of this religion would never have spread were it not for Ali ibn Abi Talib's sacrifice with his sword or Khadija's sacrifice with her wealth. Someone asks an important question. If they were burying their daughters alive, then how comes you had women actually alive in Arabia? As in, how would you continue the generations? Because some people say, we always hear that the Quran says, وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. When one of them is told of the news of a female, his face darkens and he has a certain amount of anger. So they come forward and they say, well, if you're burying your daughters alive, then how did the Arabians have generations? No, if they either bury their daughter alive, if they don't do it, what do? They keep her in the house, but with a disgrace within them. In which way? You know, when you have a new baby, you phone the whole of the world. As in, some of us, when we have a baby, we phone our grandmother in this country, our auntie in that country, these people, no. If someone comes up to them, say, we heard your wife was pregnant, what's the child? Say, it's none of your business, don't get involved. Let the girl grow up, let the girl grow up, let the girl grow up. Eventually the girl goes into the midst of society without anyone coming to stand for their rights. That was until Rasulullah came with the religion of Islam. When Rasulullah came with the religion of Islam, remember, Rasulullah grew up in the midst of these people. The Prophet grew up in the midst of these people. When he came with the religion, he brought a whole new ethos to the status of the daughter in the religion of Islam. And he did this in two ways. He did this with his words, and he did this with his actions. Naturally, our actions will speak louder than our words. You found Rasulullah, the first way he elevated the status of the daughter in Islam was by highlighting the traditions of respect which God gives to a person who has a daughter. And subhanallah, the following hadiths, anyone who has a daughter in this hall will have a field day today when they hear these hadiths. Because you find Rasulullah raises the status of the daughter in the eyes which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him to raise. The first hadith being the most famous, when Rasulullah would come forward and state that whoever looks after his daughter, Allah looks after him on the day of judgment. Straight away. Whoever has mercy on his daughter, Allah has mercy on him on the day of judgment. Then a second narration, whoever has 3 daughters is guaranteed paradise. And I'm sure those of you who have 3 sons are probably frustrated now, that what happens with us with 3 sons, where are we heading? No, inshallah, you're heading to that same paradise. But Rasulullah would say, whoever has 3 daughters, Allah promises him paradise. Then in another narration, he would say, imagine Rasulullah saying this in the midst of a people who had buried their daughters alive. Rasulullah in another narration, what would he say? He said, a daughter is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Notice why. Because your daughters are kind. And your daughters are what? Your daughters are humble. And your daughters have cleanliness. And your daughters are polite. Notice what Rasulullah mentions. That when you look for any father, you'll always find them proud of their daughters, isn't it? And you'll find that each of these attributes are within them. When you look at that female fetus, what do you think? That fetus doesn't have attributes which the male fetus will have? At the end of the day, the male fetus, in the same way the male has attributes given to them by God, there are certain attributes which God gave the female. Rasulullah said you'll find kindness within the female, without a doubt. Kindness within your daughter. You'll find politeness. As in sometimes when we speak to our dads, we speak like monsters, I tell you. But have you seen when a girl speaks to our dad? Honestly, when your sister speaks to the dad and she makes that, what do they call it, puppy face? And the dad's like, please don't make that face. That face, you know that face, I can't do anything to that face. When they drop their cheeks in front of their dad, and that smile comes out, but with a bit of sadness, the dad straight away is like, take whatever you want, take. When we do that, the dad's like, go back and do your work, you're not getting anything from me. You find that that sense of politeness, that sense of warmth, that sense of kindness, Allah is saying is within that fetus. How dare you perform infanticide on that fetus? That fetus has characteristics which the man can never reach. On top of that, cleanliness, as in without a doubt, Rasulullah said, when a father looks at his daughter, he looks at cleanliness. Sometimes you find us, we may have the odd aftershave, and we'll spray it on ourselves or a deodorant. Our sisters, the body spray and the deodorant and perfume and every spray there is, a cleanliness of every type of product that there is, a looking after of the body, a looking after of the soul. That cleanliness you find within the daughter as well. And that's why Rasulullah would tell the Arabs, who are your fathers? They would say Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. He said, do you know what Prophet Ibrahim read in a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do you know what Prophet Ibrahim read in a dua? They would say, no, what did he say? He said, Prophet Ibrahim, Allah gave him Ismail and Allah gave him Ishaq. Yet after he gave the both of them, Prophet Ibrahim said, Ya Allah, I beg of you to give me a daughter who will remember me after I die and will cry over me as well after I die. Because that daughter's heart is lenient towards her father, isn't it? That daughter has got attributes of leniency and compassion which we as males may have as sons, but never as much as a daughter in her relationship with her father. And that's why when Rasulullah would say that a female is a blessing, one of the best examples our sixth Imam gave of how a female was a blessing, a daughter was a blessing, was in the story of Khidr and Musa. Because someone came to our sixth Imam once and said to him, when Khidr and Musa went on their famous journey together, you know in the Quran, Khidr takes Musa on a journey and he tells Musa not to question him about anything he's going to see. In that journey, arguably the most controversial part of the journey was what? The most controversial part of the journey was when Khidr slaughters the young boy. Nabi Musa, when he sees this slaughtering, Nabi Musa straight away, what does he do? He says to Prophet Khidr alayhi salam, why did you just slaughter that innocent young boy? Prophet Khidr looked at him and he said to him, I told you, you do not have the patience to bear what I'm going to show you, the knowledge which I have. Nabi Musa said, very well, I won't ask you any more questions. When Prophet Khidr began to explain to him the reasons behind each of the aspects of the story, when Prophet Khidr came to the young boy, Nabi Musa said, so why did you slaughter the young boy? Prophet Khidr said, you do not see the wisdom behind when Allah takes a child's life away sometimes. He said to him, what do you mean? He said, when sometimes Allah takes a child's life, we straight away say, why? Whereas we recognize whatever God gives is from His mercy, and whatever God takes is from His mercy. True? He said, yes. He said that young boy was going to be a menace to his family, a disruptive influence on even his parents' relationship. So Allah took his life away as a blessing to his parents, which they could not see. And He replaced the young boy with a daughter from whose line 70 prophets will be born. Imagine. As in, if we were there at the time when that young boy dies, we'll think to ourselves, Ya Allah, why? Why have you taken the boy? Allah was showing us there is more blessing in a daughter than there is in a son. A son, yes, there is blessing, no doubt, but a daughter is a blessing which none can equate. To the extent the Imams of Ahlelbayt say a daughter is a greater blessing on a Muslim family than a son. From that daughter's line, 70 prophets of God were to be born. From that one girl, that daughter who the Arabs were burying alive, you find that that daughter from her line, what happened? From her line, prophets of God were to be born. And that's why Aisha comes to Rasulullah one day. She says, Ya Rasulullah, there was this lady who came to me today with 2 daughters. She said to me, I am hungry. So I decided to give her a date. This lady cut the date in half, gave half to one daughter, half to another, and she herself didn't even eat. Rasulullah said to her, that one act of nurturing and being generous to her daughter will be a barrier for her between herself and hellfire on the day of judgment. One act towards the daughter. Imagine Arabia, which was burying the daughters alive, had reached a level where Rasulullah was saying, when a mother or a father nurtures their daughter and is generous, mark the words of Rasulullah, brothers and sisters. Why? Notice Rasulullah doesn't say when a mother and a father is generous. We're all good with our wealth to our daughters. The problem is some of us are too generous with no nurturing. What do I mean? I mean, it's not just well and good that I pay for her school fees, and I pay for her to go on holiday, and I pay for her to buy the material aspects of this world. That is a blessing. Rasulullah highlights on the first level that whoever nurtures and is generous. Today in the Muslim world, we have a lot of generosity to our daughters, but the nurturing is slowly going and is in some cases missing. What do we mean? Nurturing between a father and a mother and a daughter is what? It's not just that I pour the material aspects on the world on them. No, it's that the spiritual aspects I ingrain in them as well. What do I mean? You find, for example, when you look within the Quran, Adam with his sons is mentioned, Nuh with his sons, Yaqub with his sons, Dawood son, Sulaiman, Ibrahim son. Only one prophet of God in the Quran is mentioned with his daughters, Prophet Shu'aib, isn't it? No other prophet. Prophet Shu'aib highlighted to us, it's not just about being generous to your daughter. No, it's also about nurturing them with the discipline of this religion. That when you have a daughter, that daughter is a sustenance from Allah, and every rizq from Allah has to be protected, isn't it? You find Prophet Shu'aib alayhi salam, when you looked at his daughters, that stand of his daughters by the well when they've gone to collect water, and they're standing in a queue, and there are mahram men in front of them, isn't it? There are men who are what? Who are mahram to them. These men, they know very well, because they are mahram to them, it means what? It means that they can't interact with them too freely, isn't it? There is a certain discipline in these daughters. They want to get the water, but there are men in front of them, so they wait and they wait and they wait. Nabi Musa alayhi salam looks at these daughters. He thinks to himself, why are these daughters holding a bucket but they aren't going to collect the water? Nabi Musa comes up to him and he says that I see the men are not giving you a chance. Why are you waiting here? They said, we've come to collect water for our father, but our father is an old man. We wanted to go ahead in the queue, but there are men who are not mahram to us, and our father has nurtured us to have discipline when we are around men who are not mahram to us. Nabi Musa said, very well, I'll help you collect the water. He helped them collect the water. On the way back towards the house, one of them began an interaction with her father, an open dialogue. She said, Dad, this man was a man who was strong and he was trustworthy. Notice here the father-daughter relationship. What is it? That there is no harm discussing any aspect with your daughter of her personal and her public life. That Nabi Shu'aib alayhi salam said, oh my daughter, what are you saying? She's saying, Father, I would be honored if you would go to propose to him, that I want to marry him if he is willing to marry me. A father here, it's not just about how much money he's poured on his daughter. The nurturing was in what? Their discipline in their ethics and the openness of dialogue with the father. The father did not tell them, I will decide for you who you marry. I will arrange the marriage. You have no choice. The father said, if that is who you want to marry, I will go and speak to him. And he went to him. قال إني أريد أن أنكحك إحدى ابنتي هاتين. I want you to marry one of these two daughters of mine. The Quran, what was it showing us? The Quran was saying that nurture your daughters not only to have discipline, but nurture them to be open with you and frank on any issue. Because in religion there is no embarrassing discussion. In religion we should be open with each other, and especially with our daughters in this generation, because our daughters in this generation are facing many tests at university, at college, at school, at the workplace. Unless a father nurtures his daughter to be open with him, then do not be surprised if we end up losing some of our daughters in our community. A daughter is to be nurtured, and then generosity is to be shown. And that's why Rasulullah would act that in his own life. If his daughter Fatima would enter a room, he'd stand up as soon as his daughter would enter. And you'd find, as soon as he'd stand up, the Arabs would be astonished. Only a few years ago we were burying a girl alive, and now Muhammad stands up for a girl. He would say to them, why are you surprised? They said, but she's only a daughter. He would say, she is the mother of her father. Fatima is the mother of her father. Her interaction with me as a daughter is the most mature interaction, the most disciplined interaction, the interaction any father would love to have with his daughter. And that's why that type of interaction would continue within Al-Muhammad generally. That you would find within the family of Rasulullah this loving relationship between the fathers and their daughters. Ali ibn Abi Talib would sit with Zainab, his beloved daughter, right in front of him. One day he'd come to her and he'd say to her, Zainab, count with me. She would say to him, okay father. He would say to her, say one. She would say one. He'd say to her, say two. She would say one. He'd say to her, no Zainab, two. She says one. He said, no Zainab, after one comes two. She goes one. He says to her, Zainab, what's wrong? Why don't you say two? She said, the tongue which is used to saying there is only one cannot say two. From that young age, that beautiful interaction, isn't it? On another occasion, Zainab, my dear daughter, who do you love? She said, I love you, daddy. Who else do you love? I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said to her, but Zainab, you can't have two loves in one heart. She said, daddy, it's because of you I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You find that beautiful interaction. The father would nurture his daughter. He'd be generous to his daughter. He wouldn't make his daughter think that he couldn't be there as a buffer for her emotion. Today, Muslim fathers and their interaction with their daughters is on a very materialistic level. The father has become a credit card machine, isn't it? That's it. Dad, I want to spend. Dad, I want to spend. The father should say, I will be the machine for you, don't worry. I will be the pin code. You want the 4 digits? I'll give you as many 4 digits as you want. But at the same time, if there are any issues in your life, open up to me, talk to me. Tell me, what are your issues? Let me try and understand them. And likewise you'd find with Abi Abdullah al-Hussein that beautiful relationship with his daughters. Abu Abdullah, that relationship that he had with his daughters. How many daughters did Imam al-Hussein have? The narrations mention to us that Imam al-Hussein had 4 daughters. His eldest daughter, and these are differences of opinion amongst the historians, of course, depending on the different historical narratives. His eldest daughter, according to most historians, was a daughter by the name of Sukaina. A daughter which in some narrations is mentioned that she was born in the 42nd year after Hijrah, and on the 10th of Muharram she was 18 years of age. Then you find a second daughter by the name of Fatima as-Sughra, the daughter who he left behind who he left behind in Medina. This daughter was born in the 51st year after Hijrah, and she was 10 years old by the time of the event of Karbala. Then the historians mention a third daughter by the name of Zainab, and then they mention a fourth daughter by the name of Ruqayya. Ruqayya, who on the 10th of Muharram was 3.5, 4 years of age. And I tell you, each of these daughters had a profound love for their father. The warmth between these daughters, the kindness, the politeness, the cleanliness of soul and body, you would not find a relationship like the relationship of Imam al-Hussein with his daughters. And that's why, can you imagine how these daughters felt when the horse came back without its rider? Because when they bid farewell to the horse, the rider was on the horse, wasn't he? But when Shimr sat on the chest of the rider, the horse came back to the house of Rasulullah, the tents of Al-Muhammad. And the narrations mention Sukaina looking towards the tent and saying towards the horse, "Oh horse, where is my father who used to ride you?" Sukaina could understand, but that's Ruqayya, 3.5, 4 years old. Those of you who have a 3.5, 4-year-old daughter, you know her level of comprehension, her level of understanding. This Ruqayya, when the horse returned, she looked at her auntie Zainab. She said, "My auntie, where is my father, Abi Abdullah?" Her auntie looked towards her. She said to her, "My darling Ruqayya, your father has gone on a long journey. He will return to you one day." Of course, that was the journey of death. That was the journey towards Barzakh. Ruqayya, after Karbala in Kufa, she would wake up in the middle of the night. She'd say, "My auntie Zainab, where is my father, Abu Abdullah? You said to me he's on a journey. When is he returning to me?" Again, Sayyidah Zainab would say, "He is on a long journey, be patient." Then they put chains around Ruqayya's neck and they took her to Sham, and they took her through the bazaar in Sham, and they poked spears on Ruqayya's body, and they poured boiling water on her sisters' bodies, and then they took them to the prisons in Sham. When they took them to the prisons in Sham, the ladies of Al-Muhammad tried to remain patient in these prisons. Ruqayya would keep saying, "My auntie Zainab, where is my father? Where is my father?" Again, auntie would say, "Your father is on a long journey." Until one night, the narrations mention that all of a sudden Ruqayya woke up and she called out, "Where is my father, Abdullah? Oh, my auntie Zainab, direct me to my father's body. I wanted to see him." Zainab tried to calm Ruqayya down. Ruqayya kept on crying and crying. Again she called out, "Where is my father, Abu Abdullah?" The narrations mention that Yazid woke up when he heard her scream. When Yazid woke up when he heard the scream, he said to his guards, "What is that noise?" And they said to him, "It's the 4-year-old daughter of Hussein." He said, "What's wrong with her?" They said to him, "She wants to see her father." He said, "Very well, show her her father's head." They placed the head of Imam al-Hussein in a plate. They covered the plate. They took it to Ruqayya. Ruqayya was sitting down. When she saw the plate, she looked to her auntie Zainab. She said, "Oh, my auntie Zainab, I never said I was hungry. All I
first was to see my father in front of me. Sayyidah Zainab looked towards her. She said to her, no, Ruqayya, no. And this moment the soldier said, that is not food. She said, then what is it? She removed the cover. She saw the head of Abu Abdullah. She looked towards the head of Abu Abdullah. She said to him, oh my father Abu Abdullah, who severed your head from your body, who covered your beard with your blood, oh my father, who is there for the orphans of Al Muhammad after you have died? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise our daughters on the day of judgment as lovers of Muhammad and Al Muhammad, to allow us to be amongst those who receive their intercession in this world and the hereafter. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it the loudest of your salawat. Bismillah.